So now we're going to talk about frame rate, and basically all frame rate is how many frames your camera will shoot in 1 second, or like that can be video or photography, very similar, but more so it's used in video. So the cinematic standard in Australia or Europe is 25 frames per second. I think in America and US and some other countries it's 23.978 or 24.978. So here in Australia we shoot 25 frames per second, meaning, as I said in the shutter speed video, in the shutter speed video, my shutter speed would be 50 because it's double my frame rate. That gives you the most cinematic look. Now the way to imagine frame rate is to go back to the film days where you have a strip of film and you see those little windows. Basically what it means is if you're shooting 25 frames per second, it means 25 of those windows will pass through the camera's sensor per second. So when you think about that, it's pretty crazy the amount of film you would have gone through if you're shooting on film. And even these days with the whole data, SD cards, it's amazing that you can obviously fill a card up very quickly with the amount of information being passed to it. So the faster normally if you're editing in, say you're editing in a 25 frames per second timeline using Adobe Premiere or your editing software, if you record a clip at 50 frames per second on your camera, when you bring it into your editing software, usually it'll play just as normal, and what it'll do is it'll drop half the frames. So you got 50 frames in a 25, so let's just do it this way. 50 frames, and you got a 25 frame per second timeline, it'll drop half the frames to match the 25. But the cool thing about that is because you do have 50 frames, you can use slow motion. So you can slow that 50 frame clip down to 50%, so it's half the speed, so you get half speed slow motion and you don't use any drop frames or anything like that. So this is a concept that when I first started with video editing, I was wondering why I was shooting something at 25 frames, editing it at 25 frames, and wondering why when I use the slow motion effect in my editing software, it would work, but it would be really jittery, things would look weird, some of the backgrounds would start moving with the subject, and I always wondered why, and it's because the software is actually trying to build those frames because they don't exist technically. Because if you shoot in 25 and you edit in 25, you can go slow motion, you're adding frames, so the software has to make up frames to fit that. So basically if I shot at 25 and edit in 25 and I slow mode my clip down 50%, you would have to make up half those frames to bring it up to the 50% of slow motion. So you will get some weird things going on. Not always, depends how it's shot. So if you do know you're going to be doing something in slow motion, then do try and shoot at a higher frame rate for later. But you really do have to know what you're shooting at the time, because you don't want a clip that was supposed to look cinematic. You don't want that shot at 50 frames per second because it can look a bit weird. And if you do put it in your editor and it drops the frames, you can lose a bit of the quality, I guess, or the data that you originally captured. So it is better to just shoot what you need when you need it, and that can be really hard when it's just run and gun type shooting. But if you have a script or whatever and you're shooting a short film or anything like that, you'll be able to look at it and say, okay, this scene we want slow motion, so we'll shoot it in 50 frames per second or whatever you want. The higher frame rate you choose, the slower motion you can get. So even if you shoot 120 frames per second, you can go even slower. So basically that's the best thing to do. If you're not sure whether you're going to use the slow-mo or normal motion of that clip, if possible, shoot it twice in both. If not, then it is possible to bring a 50 frame per second clip down to 25 frames and it won't be too bad. So it'll just might look a bit strange and not as cinematic, the motion's a little bit too fluid. It's very, very similar to shutter speed, and they're both very closely related because they both similarly do the same thing. It's basically how it captures the frame. So I think that's all really we're going to talk about frame rate without getting into it too much, because then you've got progressive, interlaced and all those types of things. But yeah, I think that's about it. So everyone, I hope that video helped you. As I said, I will be putting these in separate videos, just like what is ISO, what is shutter speed, etc. And I'll have this one long video on there as well. So for those who want to learn the whole lot, they can. And for those who only need to know or only need a hand with ISO or Aperture or whatever, can just go visit those videos. So I hope this really helped. Please subscribe, please comment if you like, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.